Okay.
Awesome. All right. So first one is first is so obviously you're on the chosen as Shmuel. Do I say that right? Shmuel?
No, the way you say it is Shmuel. Think about just the
Shmuel.
letter L. Shmuel.
Shmuel. Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
So I was actually going to ask you firstly, what are like your personal beliefs like regarding like Jesus and all that? Is he the son of God in your mind? In my mind, he is. I do believe that. I'm just curious for you.
Yeah, so it's a very popular question that we get as cast members because obviously we're telling a story about um the story of Jesus and the Gospels, and so many of those who created the show are believers, but we have a very diverse cast of people of all faiths, no faith, different ethnicities from all over the world. Our cast is literally a global cast where we've brought people in from so many different countries. And there was never any question, any litmus test, any requirement that anybody have any particular belief to be on the show. Dallas and Amanda, the husband and wife team that are kind of the founders, the creators of the show, they're very open about their faith and about their journey, and they were convinced that the best way to serve this story was to bring the best actors and the best crew and the best people together to honor telling the story in the best way possible, that it wouldn't serve God and it wouldn't serve the story to just hire people based on what they said about their religious beliefs, if they didn't have the skills or weren't the right people for the job. And so people tend to ask us these questions, but it's such a private, personal question. Like, I don't know of another television series where that would be the question you ask of somebody who's an actor. It's actually illegal to ask people certain questions in a hiring environment, like you're not allowed to discriminate on the basis of religion or ethnicity or certain other characteristics. So whenever anybody asks any of us that question, I always like to tell people that there are some members of our cast that will be comfortable sharing their own personal, private beliefs, and there's others that get very uncomfortable with that. Um, I'm open about my faith in the last couple of years, especially, but not everybody is that way. And so I just want people to know that one, think about like why you're asking and whether that's an important question and why that's an important question when you're talking to an actor on a TV show. But the other thing to think about is some people really are afraid of letting anybody down, of making anything awkward, of disappointing people because they don't want people to see them or treat them differently just because they don't share the same faith as somebody who really enjoys the show, is touched by the show, and all of that. So, all of that being said, I've been very open about the fact that I was born again when I was in high school and that I'm absolutely a follower of Christ, and that I've been very blessed to be invited by church communities all around the country and soon around the world to go talk about my own journey of faith, my own experience on the show, and to help other people connect with God in their ways, and to spread the messages of Christ in the gospel. So that's my own personal thing, but I just like to give the context for the idea that what seems like a very simple, natural question to ask is actually very complex in our show and within our cast and our crew.
All right. Thank you for explaining that. I apologize. I wasn't trying to like
No,
force you.
no, and it is not necessary to apologize. Like I said, it is one of the most common questions that we get. The questions we get most frequently are you a believer? And like, how has your time on the show affected your faith? Like, those are the top two questions that we always get. And so we're used to receiving those questions, and that's why I have an answer that just makes sure that we can preserve the privacy and dignity of all of our cast and crew, no matter what they believe.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah. So the reason I was asking that one is for my first question that I have written down. It was actually for you specifically playing the character that you play.
Mhm.
And I was just trying to like get an establishment of like your faith as like a to litmus it against the comparison.
Mhm.
So obviously I think Shmuel,
Yeah, just
Shmuel,
get the E out of there. Just think of UL, Shmuel.
Shmuel. Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
So with Shmuel, I think a lot of people miss, I think, the beauty of his character, and that's that from his perspective, he thinks he's doing the right thing. And I think a lot of people overlook that.
Hmm.
And at least that's my interpretation of it, is that from his perspective, I do believe that even if we can see some of his actions aren't uh the way they should be, I think, like, because sometimes he goes about things a little bit misguided, I think, but I think he does believe he's doing the right thing.
Hmm.
And I'm just curious, when you as an actor are trying to portray that, like, obviously you have your personal views. How do you separate that within yourself to like the character to like let that flow out, if that makes sense?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's just a basic acting question, you know? Like, if you're not an actor, you would, perhaps think that your own personal beliefs would be in conflict with what you have to do for your job. But as a actor, it's my job to tell stories, and that's what this is. It's a story that means a lot to so many of us, but it's still a story. And so the process of me telling it and doing it is no different than any of the other films or television shows or commercials or plays that I've done in my life. It's a storytelling responsibility that I have. It just happens to be in a story and in a with a subject matter that means so much to so many people, right? So it lands differently than if it was just like a Star Wars or a Game of Thrones or something like that. So and I agree with you that Shmuel is not a bad guy. In fact, I challenge people to tell me what he's done that's so wrong. How has he sinned? I mean, really, people's frustration with Shmuel is that he hasn't accepted Jesus yet. But we have the benefit of 2,000 years and looking back in retrospect of knowing what we know now. At the time, nobody knew what was going on. This was all new, and it's not even a Christian story yet because we're seeing the birth of what is to become Christianity, but it's largely a Jewish show based on Jewish traditions and Jewish religious practices back in that time. Jesus was a rabbi and he had, disciples just like other rabbis did, and he spoke in synagogues and read Torah. And so that's been a really common feedback that I get from people is that they're rediscovering or maybe discovering for the first time the Jewish roots of the Christian traditions and the Christian faith. And so, yeah, from my perspective, absolutely, Shmuel is doing what he thinks is right. And also being somebody who was a Pharisee at the time, the Pharisees were strict, not always just because they were being legalistic. The belief at the time was that the Messiah would not come and rescue them from oppression and from, occupation unless they were worthy, unless they were godly, unless they were a worthy people. So part of the emphasis of the religious leaders for people to follow the laws and to follow the rules was to shorten their suffering and to create conditions where the Messiah would come and be a military leader to free them from Roman oppression and occupation. So it wasn't just because they were trying to be strict and legalistic. There was actually a real reason behind it. And Shmuel is just trying to honor the traditions that he was raised to believe. He was a student of Nicodemus in our story, so learning from the teacher of teachers. And so I think part of why people sometimes judge Shmuel harshly is because we all can be Shmuel sometimes, and that's not a part of ourselves that we're necessarily proud of because a lot of times we have confirmation bias. We see only what we want to see. We're closed off to the truth because we have our own blinders, we have our own agenda. And so Shmuel is a reminder that you can be a good person and still be wrong, and that you can be so blinded by what you think is right that you fail to see the truth that's right in front of you. And that's happened to just about everybody at some point.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I do have another question about, this is like more on the acting side of it, like the technical, just like you personally.
Hmm.
So not just for The Chosen, any story or play or whatever you've done has can fit into this. But when you're acting out, and a character that you're playing is in direct conflict with something necessarily that you as an individual would want to do, does that create like any like dissonance or like mental stress on you or anything like that? Or is it just like one thing that you like? I guess because I'm not an actor, so I'm just curious about the process of how like when you're needing to perform something that's opposite to what you as a person would do. How is, if you're up to just brush that off, like kind of like how does that go through like the process? Like are you able to just focus on that and then be like separate it from myself? Or is it more like you have to like look for a part of you that would make that choice perhaps? I guess is I've always been fascinated with the dichotomy of a person embodying another person.
Yeah, well, if you think about it in a certain way, anytime we're acting, doing anything, whether it's something that we would look at and be like, okay, this is going against Jesus, or, even if I was professing love to another person that I didn't actually love as Sean, but that, my character loves as, Bob or Steve or whatever the character's name is, anytime we're not doing exactly what we personally would do, it requires the very same process, which is like I'm putting Sean on the shelf, and while I'm working, while I'm in this art form, I am living, believing, breathing, thinking the things that this character would believe and think and feel. I have done my research, my work to make choices about why he's doing what he's doing, what the most compelling way to tell that part of the story would be. And it's not a challenge to do that. It's I mean, it's not it's a challenge to find the best way to tell the story. It's a challenge to make the most compelling work. It's to do the research. I mean, there's hard work involved, but it's not like a dissonance thing in your mind. It's actually the skill that we develop very early on is that, we're using our instrument, our body, our heart, our mind to portray human experiences and emotions and relationships that if I'm acting, it's not Sean that's having that experience. It's the character that's having that experience. So it doesn't affect me whether it's something I would do as Sean or not. It's always that way.
Okay, awesome. That's beautiful.
Mhm,
Because, excuse me, I mentioned that I was in the army for 7 years,
mhm,
and like towards like the back end, I got out last year. So I've been out for about a year now,
mhm,
and I really started like looking into like acting and stuff like that. Not for me to do, just like as like a fascination, because I'm
mhm,
thinking about becoming a psychologist as my next step,
mhm,
and just like the human mind is something that like I want to understand and everything like that. So that's a lot of the roots for like the acting technical side of it. That question, and
mhm,
I think that was very wonderful and that was very nice.
mhm.
My next question is, just like for you personally, like outside of like The Chosen or like anything you've ever done, like what's like your like dream role, I guess? Like what's something you would love to do?
Well, I mean, I've hit the lottery when it comes to the kinds of stories you can tell as a performer because the dream of every actor is to tell stories that touch people's lives. Almost every actor became an actor because we saw something in a movie or TV show that moved us and touched us in a way that made us want to do the same thing for others. And so for me to be a part of this particular project that has already reached 500 million people around the world, is growing all the time, is in it's almost 200 countries, is already in 175 languages, on its way to 600 languages. I mean, the stories that we hear all the time of the impact it's having, the direct experiences I have interacting with supporters of the show that they come up to me and tell me what it's meant to them and how it's affected them and changed them. When I'm recognized out in public and people want to come up to me and they come up with such a warmth, such a smile, such like genuine gratitude for what it is that we're doing. There's no story or project or film or TV show I'm ever going to do that is going to surpass the impact of this. So, as far as I'm concerned, I've already had a rare storytelling experience that there's only a few of us that are engaged on the show have the privilege of having done. There will only ever be one, The Chosen, and even other biblically inspired projects we do, whether it's the Joseph miniseries or the Moses story or the Way that's coming in the future, which is the Book of Acts, or any of the other stories that come, are all going to be wonderful in their own ways, I'm sure, but they aren't going to be The Chosen. And The Chosen is going to be distinct because it's the Gospels, because it's seven seasons, because it's the story of Jesus. It's just going to be a little different on a different level. And so we call it within our own production family the mothership. The Chosen is the mothership that launched kind of all other projects, right? And I got to be a major part of that. So for me, that's already a dream come true that I could never have anticipated when I started this journey as a kid, when I started acting in high school. In terms of like other projects and other dream roles and things I'd want to do, I mean, there's so many other stories that I want to tell There's a script that me and my friend just optioned that we're going to get produced and made, which is a beautiful story that isn't even a vehicle for myself. It's a female-led story about special needs parenting and euthanasia and elderly, issues, and it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous story. But there's other, roles that I want to play. But I think after being part of The Chosen, I really feel like the kinds of stories that I want to tell, I want them all to have some kind of impact that would uplift people, give people courage, give people strength, make people want to be better, do better, improve their communities, etc. Like I'm not necessarily uh like motivated now to do stories that don't make things better in some way.
That's beautiful. That's awesome. I like that answer a lot. Because that's a big thing that I've been thinking about too, is like stories I think are like the best way that we can reach people. And
Hmm.
like obviously with the way the world is, like everyone wants to always improve it and make it better. And I think The Chosen's been really good for that. And especially I think like not even necessarily just like, in The Chosen you got like your good roles, like you got like Andrew or Peter and stuff like that. But I think also what really helps is the like adversary roles, such as
Hmm.
your character or others, and seeing how Jesus and them treat them, where they don't treat them like with disdain or anything like that. And it embodies the whole, like, I say to you, love your enemies. And I think that's beautiful. And I think that's something that Chosen does really well.
That's
And this,
very true. And actually, you say what you will about Shmuel, but he doesn't deny knowing Jesus three times like Peter will.
Mhm.
Like, say what you will about Shmuel, but Shmuel's very honest. He's very open. He's like, people forget that Shmuel was not at the Sermon on the Mount. He didn't get to see what Yusuf saw. He wasn't at the feeding of the 5,000 until it was over. He wasn't on the rooftop with Nicodemus when they had that conversation that showed Nicodemus that he was the Messiah. Um, so Shmuel is doing the best he can with the limited access and information that he has. And the fact that he already almost comes over to believing in Jesus as the Messiah at the end of season 4 is already, like almost a miracle because he's the kind of person who is comfortable with structure, with rules, with following what he was raised. Not everybody is open-minded by nature. A lot of people are very conservative by nature and they need structure and they want to follow the rules. And in fact, some of that is even the debate between are you more a Mary or more of a Martha? Like are you somebody who just wants to take care of everyone and wants to do all these things and be the responsible one? Or, can you be Mary and can you let that go and just be present with what God is saying? And so yeah, like I absolutely love the character of Shmuel, and I do think that the way that Jesus receives him after the feeding of the 5,000, after Shmuel's been trying to chase him down and trying to get him in trouble and trying to expose him as a false prophet and get evidence or witnesses against him. And how does Jesus receive him? He says, "You look troubled. Please share." Like, do you want to go with me and pray? Sometimes people just need company when they're feeling like this. And what a lovely way to be treated by Jesus after Jesus could have completely rebuked Shmuel for everything he was doing. In fact, even in season 2, we see that John and Simon go to warn Jesus that Shmuel is in Jerusalem preaching against false prophecy. And what Jesus says is, "Our Shmuel?" He doesn't say Shmuel. He says our Shmuel. He still owns Shmuel as part of their community, part of their family, who's just perhaps on the wrong track at the moment. But when people come up to me and they say, "Oh, I had such hope for your character," or "Oh, you almost made it," I'm like, wait, Shmuel is a young man. Like, does everybody find their way by the time they're 30 years old? Does everybody find God? People's faith journeys can last a lifetime, and God doesn't give up on you at any stage. So if Shmuel has already come so close, that's actually a good sign that he's moving closer to God. And so, anyway, I totally agree with you that our show shows a beautiful way of how you can even the conflict between Matthew and Simon about how Simon said, I'll never forgive you for exploiting our people and being a tax collector and working with the Romans and all of that. You made our lives that were already hard even harder. You betrayed your own people. And just a few seasons later, they hug it out and They didn't refuse to sit at the same table, even if they had huge problems with each other. They both served a cause that was bigger than themselves, and it brought actually them together in the end. And so it's there's a real lesson in that you can still work with and associate with people who you completely disagree with, maybe even you think you hate them, but as long as you stay at the same table and serve God together, you could do a lot of good together, and you might even find your way back to each other.
Yeah, that's awesome. And there with the scene with you and Jesus when you guys were like talking at the end, and he says, "I'm sorry." Like that stuck with me so much. He's like, "I'm sorry I couldn't help you," and then it's like, "No, I'm sorry I couldn't help you."
Hmm.
And in that, a lot of people can just overlook, but it's like they genuinely were both trying right there to reach out to each other and connect, and just the traditional like difference between like when she washes feet with the hair, to him that was improper. And I think a lot of people also like to just look at that and be like, why was he freaking out or whatever? But like at the time period, if you go with the context at the time, that would have been like an extremely wild thing to do. So I
Oh
understand.
gosh, absolutely. I mean, the equivalent today would be something really immodest. It would be something akin to nudity or inappropriate public displays of affection or something like that. Like men and women were not supposed to make physical contact like that. In fact, that's why Shmuel even says to Lazarus, like, you're letting your sister touch his feet. Like that's degrading, like, and so Shmuel in his mind is caring more about the dignity of the woman in the situation than than her brother seems to be. And there's also something in there where everybody seems to be like, oh, isn't it so beautiful what Mary did for Jesus in that moment to anoint him and to do all of that. But there's something else that happened that it interrupted the conversation that Shmuel and Jesus were having. It's not like Shmuel was like able to hear everything Jesus had to say to get all of his questions answered and then still rejected what Jesus had to say or still decided not to believe. It's that Shmuel was right there with an open mind, with an open heart, trying to understand, and someone else's zealousness interrupted that conversation and prevented that understanding from happening. So to me, it shows that sometimes the reason someone's faith journey may be delayed is not their own fault. Something might have happened in life that just, distracted them, took them off course, interrupted their faith journey. And that's just life sometimes. Life isn't fair. Sometimes like not everything is optimal. And you may have come really close to believing and then something happens in your life that you just, sets you back or, takes you off course. And that's gonna happen. So you can't be too hard on yourself about that. Like it's not Shmuel's fault that Mary came in and interrupted that conversation. And so and then hope that conversation couldn't continue because Shmuel was already so triggered by what he saw that at a certain point he just couldn't continue. He wasn't in the right mind space to be open-minded at that point because just try going back to a civil conversation after feeling like you just witnessed something so upsetting, so offensive, so um all of that. So yeah, I have a lot of compassion for Shmuel in that situation.
Awesome. And then also too with the back to the scene with the 5,000 or whatever, when you walk up and then you say Jesus says like, hey, let's go pray or whatever. Uh did you guys like ever like consider doing the actual prayer scene or what? Because correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't show the actual scene where they pray together. I don't believe.
No, that was intentional. The writers wanted to leave it up to the audience to decide what may have happened in that prayer between Shmuel and Jesus. And the thought process behind that is we get to see that in the next season, season four, we just see a difference in Shmuel. He's like lighter, he's having fun, he's happy to see when Yusuf joins the Sanhedrin. Like there's a lightness to there's like a lightness to Shmuel, and also he's even more open-minded about Jesus after that, and that's why he even goes to the house of Lazarus to try to see if they can find an understanding together. So yeah, I think people can imagine what they may have prayed about. And whatever they imagine might be a message that they themselves need to hear.
Yeah, that's awesome. So there's a like I always thought that Shmuel, like I always thought he was like a lot of people they like to see themselves, as like the Simon Peters or like the Andrews or whatever, but he's always the character that I related to the most. And kind of when I saw your Reddit, I was like, hey, I want to talk to this guy just because like I've always been very cautious to be cognizant of like what I know and what I don't know
Mhm.
because I think it's very easy for people and people don't like to admit it. It's very easy to be like lock in on yourself and to trust in your own understanding and to go down the wrong path for the right reasons. And so I think it's just like that character, your character has meant a lot to me in that sense of just like be aware, be mindful, stuff like that. And even in season 5, when it's the public disagreement that the Pharisees are having with Jesus, and then Jesus starts going on his like, you serpents or you vipers, brood of vipers, uh, Shmuel, he goes, Jesus, like very like exasperated. And it's like even at that point, even though they had chosen like different sides necessarily in the intellectual realm of it, he still had like this respect for Jesus that he could not believe Jesus was like so publicly denouncing the Pharisees that way. And like it was like he was like truly offended as a person and no longer as a Pharisee at that point. I just thought that was really beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate you pointing that out because, Shmuel is not someone that ever wanted anything bad to happen. Like, Shmuel doesn't want anything bad to happen. He doesn't want Jesus to be hurt. He doesn't want his own people to be led astray, or he's not a chaos agent. He's trying to fix things. He's trying to educate himself. He's trying to solve problems. He's trying to protect his community. He's even trying to look out for Jesus, which is why him and Yusuf go to warn him and say, if you keep doing this, like you're going to get hurt. You might even get killed. In fact, Thomas even restates in season 5 what Shmuel said at the house of Lazarus with that some people will be waiting for you with open arms, but others with daggers. Do you have an army that we don't know about? Because if you don't, you're in danger. And so I think that is so cool. And in that particular moment, he's really, I think a couple things are going on. One of them is that Shmuel doesn't have anything to do with what Jesus is talking about. He's only been part of the Sanhedrin for a few months. He's not responsible for why people are trading in the marketplace. He's not responsible for, like the Roman occupation and for Pharisees to be complicit with, trying to tax the people in the temple court. And, he Shmuel isn't the one that is trying to trap Jesus in his words by asking him the question that Yanni did about should we pay taxes to Rome or not? In fact, Shmuel just even says, like, we can ask him our questions, and if he answers honestly, if what he's saying is blasphemous or goes against what we think is right, like the people will see it. We don't have to like lie, we don't have to distort, we can just ask him questions and let him, like hang himself with his own words if he's wrong or if he's evil or something. And so, yeah, in that moment, I think Shmuel is both like like freaked out because what Jesus is doing is kind of a point of no return. In fact, like Nathaniel even says in that very same scene, he's basically asking them to kill him. Like he literally says that, like with what Jesus is doing. And you can see it in Jesus's eyes, in Jonathan's eyes as the actor who's playing, that as he's saying those things, he knows what he's doing. He knows he's fulfilling the prophecy. He knows he's going to be bringing this kind of like pain and suffering and death upon himself, but that's what he has to do. It's what he was there to do. He's what he's been prophesizing. And so yeah, in that moment, Shmuel is feeling personally hurt, personally mistreated, and also just like really rattled and feeling like Jesus is only making things worse for himself, and that's not what Shmuel would ever want.
Awesome. Yeah, and also too another aspect of the character that I really like too is that I think it's back in season 3. That's when the 5,000 happened, right? Is season 3?
Yeah, the feeling of 5,000 is season, I
Yeah, I
think
think
it's
it's
season
3.
3. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yep.
what I really like too with that is when it's the scene in the wagon where the guy he rides in from the Decapolis, it was like the middle of the night, and even then Shmuel's still like, "Hey, where's your prayer tassels? Where's like don't mix." I like that he upholds the standards, and then also too when they're in the wagon. I think it's Yanni. I'm not sure. It's one of the other Pharisees who are in the wagon with you, and he's like, "Oh, like why are we doing this? Why are we going?" And it's that Shmuel he still believes in like the standards set forth by the order, right? Like he still wants to uphold everything, and
Hmm.
that's to me that it was like I said, like I relate to Shmuel a lot as a character, in the sense of that when I was in the army, I was like very much into the standards. Like when I was like a brand new, like up and coming, and I was like, hey, these are the rules. We got to follow the rules. And then you get
Hmm.
like the older members of the order who are like, like do we really gotta do this? Like, and just I don't know. Like the interpretation of it has been like extremely like resonant for me, and it's meant a lot to me. Even though necessarily personally, I have the luck to be 2,000 years later and to have been raised being taught about Jesus and everything like that. And yeah, no, that was just basically. I don't got too many more questions, but that was really basically just the main thing is I wanted to talk to you, get your sense on a lot of the things and everything like that. And I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me, and it just means a lot. Like I'm not like a interviewer by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just I'm very curious about the world. I was very linear in how I approach things for the longest time, and just like this past year, what so forth. Like I'm like, oh, I can ask these questions. I can do these things. I can like like pursue my own path. And I think the Chosen's just helped me a lot. It's just been a beautiful show that I've been really grateful to watch. And like like I was raised believing in Jesus, but I did read the gospel a lot when I was first in the army, like going through basic and everything like that at 18 years old.
Hmm.
But then I got the Chosen a few years ago. I started watching when season 2 came out. I've been sticking with it. So that's like really helped me with my faith a lot. And now I've read the Bible, I think front to back like 3 or 4 times now.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
great.
So, but yeah, no, it's just I was always very much like Shmuel and like the I believe that I had to be a certain way. I had to do things a certain way. And now I'm just like, oh wow, I can see someone on the internet and be like, hey, you want to have a conversation? Can I talk to you? Like that would have never occurred to me before. And it's beautiful. And thank you for your time so much. And yeah, no, I appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you having specifics and, knowing the show and knowing certain scenes. Like what I love about the tassels comment in the scene, when that, I forget the character's name who comes in to report what he witnessed. Um, but when he arrives, Shmuel doesn't say hey, why did you take your ta He wasn't accusatory. He basically was like, oh, this must have been a mistake. Like,
Yeah.
it must have fallen off along the way. Like you wouldn't intentionally just not have your prayer tassels, which again is Shmuel's heart of being, being what kind of open-minded or not assuming the worst about somebody. And then he notices the material of the guy's garment, and then that's when he's like, it's not that you're trying to be evil, it's that like the Greek influence has polluted your faith, like from you being in the Decapolis and being around all these other cultures, you've started to relax you're obeying the laws of Moses, which we need to obey if we're going to have the Messiah come back. And so I love that moment, and I appreciate the specificity of you recognizing that. So yeah, it's a pleasure to talk to you. It's a pleasure to talk to somebody who supports the show and understands it and cares about the subject material. And thanks for reaching out. I'm really glad that anything that we did encouraged you in that way, because I'm an educator, I'm an acting teacher, I'm constantly asking my students to not assume that if you ask that the answer will be no. You'll be surprised what you get if you just ask for it. You just have to be willing to do the ask. And
Yeah.
so I appreciate that you did that.
Yeah, thank you. And then also it says in the Bible too, you have not because you ask not. I think it's James that says that. The book of James.
That's
But
great. That's right.
I did not know you were an acting teacher. I was actually curious. So wait, do you teach like classes in person or online? Like what do you do with that?
Yeah, both. I teach for three different organizations. I've had my own acting studio for, I don't know, 15 years almost, where I teach acting actually All started in my living room over here, which is where I started teaching classes in like 2011, something like that. And then I teach for SAG-AFTRA, the Actors Union, where I've been a leader for the last, what, 8, 9 years. And then I've also been a adjunct professor for Pace University in New York City, where I teach, their graduating seniors. I've done that for the last 5 years. So yeah, my business is when I'm not acting myself, I'm also training other performers on how to be successful working actors in film and television. And I teach online and I teach in person both.
Okay, yeah, that'd be cool. I was wondering if you could send me some of those resources because I don't know if I want to go into acting or whatever or anything like that. But like, just in case I think about it, if I'm gonna go for a class, I think maybe I'll just go for your class.
I appreciate that. I'll send you the website so you can keep track.
Yeah, no problem. Also, too, another offer if you would like, not to like have you like promote it or anything like that. I don't want that in it whatsoever. I've written my own book. I was just wondering if I could send it to you, just read it, and then just let me know what you think. That's all I want out of that.
I mean, I won't say no to you sending me a book. I can't make any promises about when I could read it because reading to me, I produce table reads of unproduced screenplays on a regular basis. I've got a podcast called Table Read. I do them for UCLA. I do them through my own studio. I do them with other organizations, and so I'm always reading. And so my like reading bandwidth is very constricted, But
Okay, yeah, no worries.
but if so, I'll leave it up to you whether you still think it's worth it to send it. But if you send it, then having it will make it more likely that I'll be able to get to it.
Okay, yeah, no, there's no worries if you can't get to it or anything like that. It's just like I it was more just to get like I guess a professional's like because it's not like a real like published book or anything like that. It's just like something I just wrote for myself, and I
Hmm.
was just, like curious to get like someone who knows what they're talking about's thoughts off of it. But if you're busy, I don't want to like enforce that upon you, and I don't want to like. But yeah, I might send it to you. I might not. I don't know. I'll just
Yeah, just like I said, if you send it to me, then at least I'll have it and I could get to it, but I can't make any promises about when.
and that is completely fine.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I thank you for your time. In terms of, I don't know if I'm going to put this on my YouTube or not. It was like mainly just like to like have like a thing anyway, just like proof in case I ever tell anyone that I talked to you. Because like I'm nobody at this point. It's I don't even know if I want to become someone in a media world or not. But grateful for the time. I would like to have this just for my record. I probably will just put it unlisted if that's okay with you. I'm not going to like send it to anyone, but just like for my own record. It
Yeah,
won't.
I think it's fine. And just send me your email address so I can send you the file.
Yep, no problem. I will send it to you. You want me to send it to you on Zoom right now or through Reddit?
Just do it on Reddit so I have it right there on our chat thread.
Oh yeah, and I also thank you for not dismissing my name on Reddit. I made that name when I was a very young man.
Yeah, no problem.
I don't want to. I didn't want to delete the account because it's so old now, and now everyone thinks you're bots if you have like an account before 2020.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, there you go. I just sent you the link.
Got
But
it.
yeah, thank you for your time so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And if I ever think of more questions, I might send you a text. If you can't get back to me, that's more than okay. But if I think of more, then it was a pleasure and an honor. And thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. It was a pleasure for me too. All right.
All right,
Talk
have a
to you
good one.
later.
God bless.